Whoever controls AI in the future is going to control the world. In many ways, technology, whether it be semiconductors or AI, is going to be as important, if not more important, than traditional conventional weapons for building up the strength of a country. So it's very important, frankly, for China to build up its own AI sector, its own semiconductors, language learning models. And frankly, it's also important for the United States to do so. So I think it makes sense for America to say we need to have semiconductors built in Arizona from TSMC. We need to encourage Microsoft, BlackRock, and NVIDIA to build up data house centers in the United States. I think, unfortunately, with geopolitical tensions the way they are, I think more and more countries can't rely on outsourcing what's really important to their national security to other countries, not even to allies anymore. Because frankly, after the last 9 months, we don't really know who is an ally anymore. The United States has attacked its closest ally, Canada, perhaps more brutally than they've even attacked China. So it makes sense going forward for countries to build up its own indigenous innovation. So last year, Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI behind ChatGPT, said that China was 10 years behind the United States when it came to AI innovation. Eric Schmidt, at the same time, the former CEO of Google, also said that China was 2 years behind. The reality is China is as good, if not better, than the United States when it comes to AI innovation, as we saw with the release of DeepSeek in February of this year. And over the last 6 to 9 months, we've seen so many other Chinese companies launch new language learning models, whether it be from Alibaba to a startup that nobody's ever heard of. They're creating incredible language learning models that are as good as Anthropic, as good as ChatGPT, as good as Grok. The reality, and here's the difference between what the Chinese and the Americans are doing. The Americans are making a closed system. These guys want to make profits, and they want to extract those profits in many ways by fear-mongering about China's rise. You see, the founder of Anthropic said that we need to beat the Chinese. Sam Altman says we need to beat the Chinese. Alexander Wang, who was the founder of Scale AI, which was just bought by Facebook, has said we need to beat the Chinese. Basically, the American players and their founders are all scapegoating China and using China as an excuse. Beat the Chinese in order to raise money and in order to get more regulatory approvals from the United States government. It's a very dark, dirty game, I think, that Silicon Valley is playing right now. Whenever you listen to somebody from Palantir, when you listen to Mark Andreessen, the venture capitalist, when you listen to any of the language learning model guys or tech bros in Silicon Valley, they're demonizing China. And I think that might help them personally. It might help their shareholders make a lot of money, but it's not good for the world. China and their language learning models, on the other hand, now have the top 5 largest by market share open source models in the world. So China is going open source. They're saying we're creating these AI language learning models, but we want to make this accessible for the whole world. I think what DeepSeek has done is a great gift to the world. Instead of charging or overcharging access to their LLM, which, frankly, somebody in Ghana or Ethiopia or Myanmar might not be able to afford, they're now making it open source so that people in those countries have access to the greatest technologies. So one of the problems in the world is that because the West was so wealthy, they were the ones who first got PCs. They were the ones who first got semiconductors. They were the ones who first got Microsoft Office. Because they were so rich, they had a 20, 30, 40-year lead on technology than other countries. When I first came to China, the typical Chinese couldn't afford to buy Microsoft Office. That's why they bought a lot of pirated versions. You now don't see pirated versions anymore because Chinese, they weren't morally bad. They weren't wanting to steal. They just wanted to have access to Microsoft Office to make their lives better. But now that they have money, they're willing to pay for it. And so I think what the beauty of what China's strategy is with AI is empowering people throughout the world to get access to technology. I think China wants to make sure that they don't colonize, in some ways, other countries because they're more powerful with technology, the way that the Americans and Europeans did with technology in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, by lording over their dominance in technology and innovation and forcing poor countries, forcing people in poor countries to decide, do I put food on the plate for my child today, or do I buy my child software so he can study, go to college, and get a good job? That is the difference between what the Chinese players are doing, like DeepSeek, and the self-interested, self-absorbed, and immoral players at companies like Palantir, Anthropic, OpenAI, and Facebook that are being driven by self-want and bigotry.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧！偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好。用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧！